Today we're breaking down 4.1.1 hardening targets and secure baselines. And if you remember one thing, it's this. You don't secure chaos, you secure a standard. In Security Plus SY0-701 Domain 4.1, you are expected to apply common security techniques to computing resources by establishing secure baselines and hardening different types of targets. A secure baseline is the approved secure starting configuration, and hardening is strengthening each system so attackers have fewer opportunities. Secure baselines are foundational security configurations and settings that are established, deployed, and maintained to create a secure starting point for systems, applications, and networks. A baseline defines what secure looks like before systems go live. On the exam, this appears when a scenario describes standard configurations applied across all company systems to reduce risk. The key idea is consistency. Every system starts from a known secure configuration instead of random settings. The first phase of secure baselines is the establishment phase. Establishment means defining and creating the set of security configurations, policies, and settings considered secure for a particular environment. This includes determining access controls, encryption standards, authentication mechanisms, and other security parameters. On a CompTIA-style question, if you see defining security configurations and settings for a specific environment, the correct concept is establishment. This is where you decide what strong authentication, what encryption standards, and what access control policies are required. The second phase is deployment. Deployment means implementing the established secure baselines across the organization's systems and infrastructure by configuring devices, servers, applications, and networks according to the defined standards. A typical exam scenario might describe rolling out standardized security settings to all workstations or servers. That is deployment. The primary goal here is implementing secure configurations across systems so every asset matches the approved baseline. The final phase is maintenance. Maintenance is the ongoing process of continuously monitoring, updating, and adapting secure baselines as threats evolve. It includes patch management, which means regularly applying security patches and updates to address vulnerabilities, configuration management, which ensures systems remain aligned with the established baseline. Monitoring and auditing, such as reviewing logs and conducting audits to identify and respond to security events. Incident response, which involves developing and maintaining plans for responding to security incidents or breaches, and training and awareness, which keeps personnel informed about security best practices and potential threats. On the exam, if a question describes regularly applying patches, reviewing logs, or training staff, that is maintenance. Security is not set it and forget it. It is set it, review it, update it. Now let's talk about hardening targets, which means strengthening the security of devices and systems to reduce vulnerabilities and enhance overall resilience against potential attacks. Hardening reduces the attack surface by disabling unnecessary services, enforcing strong authentication, updating firmware, and applying device-specific security controls. In a scenario where a company wants to reduce vulnerabilities on a specific device type, the correct concept is hardening that target. For mobile devices, hardening includes enforcing strong authentication methods such as biometrics or complex passwords, enabling device encryption to protect data at rest. Regularly updating and patching the operating system and applications, and implementing mobile device management solutions for centralized control. On the exam, if a question asks how to protect lost or stolen smartphones, look for strong authentication and device encryption. Never choose default passwords or disabled encryption. For workstations, hardening involves applying regular security updates and patches, using antivirus and anti-malware software, configuring strong user authentication and access controls, disabling unnecessary services and features, and implementing firewalls to control network traffic. A typical Security Plus question might describe reducing malware infections on employee desktops. The correct response would include patching anti-malware tools and disabling unnecessary services to reduce the attack surface. For switches, hardening includes disabling unnecessary ports and services, enabling port security features to restrict unauthorized access, implementing strong authentication for switch management interfaces, and regularly updating switch firmware. On the exam, if unauthorized devices are plugging into open switch ports, the correct concept is enabling port security and disabling unused ports. For routers, hardening requires changing default passwords for router access, disabling unnecessary services and protocols, implementing access control lists to control traffic, using encryption for sensitive data transmitted over the network, and regularly updating router firmware. In a scenario where traffic must be restricted between networks, access control lists are the correct concept. And leaving default passwords is basically asking to be compromised. For cloud infrastructure, hardening means following cloud provider security best practices, using multi-factor authentication for cloud accounts, implementing network security groups and firewalls, regularly auditing and monitoring cloud resources, and encrypting data in transit and at rest. On Security Plus, if a question asks how to protect cloud data from unauthorized access, look for MFA and encryption of data both in transit and at rest. For servers, hardening includes applying operating system server hardening guidelines, configuring access controls and permissions based on the principle of least privilege, regularly updating and patching server software, and implementing intrusion detection and prevention systems. In a scenario where users only need limited access to a server, the correct concept is least privilege. Give users only the access they need, not full control. For ICS and SCADA systems, hardening involves isolating critical networks from external networks, employing strong authentication mechanisms, regularly updating and patching control system components, and conducting regular security assessments and audits. On the exam, if industrial control systems must be protected from internet-based threats, network isolation is the key concept. For embedded systems, hardening includes disabling unnecessary services and features, using secure boot processes, employing encryption for data storage and communication, and regularly updating firmware and software. If a scenario mentions preventing unauthorized firmware from loading, secure boot is the correct answer. For RTOS, or real-time operating systems, hardening involves limiting unnecessary services and features, implementing secure communication protocols, employing memory protection mechanisms, and regularly updating and patching the RTOS. In exam language, if a system must perform real-time tasks securely and prevent memory exploitation, memory protection mechanisms are the correct concept. For IoT devices, hardening requires changing default passwords and using strong authentication, regularly updating firmware and software, implementing secure communication protocols, and disabling unnecessary features to reduce the attack surface. A classic Security Plus scenario describes smart devices compromised because default credentials were never changed. The fix is simple: change defaults, patch regularly, and reduce unnecessary features. The key cybersecurity takeaway is that secure baselines create a consistent, secure starting configuration through establishment, deployment, and maintenance, while hardening targets reduces vulnerabilities across specific device types to minimize the attack surface. If this helped you understand today's topic, consider liking and subscribing for more cybersecurity lessons like this.